Yes, we are live. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir, and it's my privilege to welcome you all to the final session of this World Wetland Day webinar series, when we are marking the conclusion of what has been an insightful and engaging journey into the world of wetlands and their conservation. Over the past sessions, we have explored the ecological, socio-economic, and policy dimensions of wetland conservation, hearing from experts who have shared their knowledge, experiences, and research. So, as we wrap up this series today, today's discussion on wetlands, kidneys of the ecosystem, couldn't be more fitting. Wetlands are among the most productive yet threatened ecosystems, playing a vital role in water filtration, flood regulation, climate mitigation, and biodiversity support. Yet they continue to face unprecedented challenges from habitat degradation, pollution, and climate change. And today we have with us Dr. Neeraj Mahar. Dr. Neeraj Mahar is dedicated wildlife researcher with a deep-rooted passion for mountain ecosystem and conservation biology. He is currently serving as a project scientist in the WII NMCG project. He is actively involved in monitoring the status of aquatic fauna, including birds and mammals, in the Indian riverine ecosystems. As part of this initiative, he aims to explore upstream habitats and the impacts of hydropeaking on different taxa to inform conservation strategies. His broader research interests lie in the Himalayan ecosystem, animal ecology, and behavior, and also the anthropological aspects of hill communities. Hailing from Pithoragarh, Uttarakhand, Dr. Neeraj's journey in wildlife research began after completing his master's in environmental science, when his fascination with mountain landscapes led him to join the Wildlife Trust of India. There he extensively studied high altitude ungulates and pheasants across the western and eastern Himalayas. And he later joined the Wildlife Institute of India as a junior research fellow under the supervision of Dr. S.A. Hussain, where he conducted pioneering research on black-necked cranes and other water birds in Ladakh. His doctoral research further extended his expertise, focusing on the ecological and behavioral aspects of breeding water birds, while also assessing the impacts of free-ranging dogs on wildlife in the Changthang region of Ladakh. So, as a speaker in the World Wetlands Day webinar series, Dr. Neeraj will present on wetlands, kidneys of the ecosystem, shedding light on the critical role wetlands play in maintaining ecological balance. And with his extensive field experiences and conservation insights, his talk promises to offer a compelling perspective on the urgent need to protect these fragile ecosystems. And I would like to tell our viewers that who have joined us on YouTube. So if you have any comments, suggestions, or any questions, so we'll be taking them at the end of the session. You can drop them in the chat box. So I once again welcome Neeraj, and please, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you for this introduction. Now I will share my presentation with you all. I think it's visible now. Amir, is it visible?
Yes, it is. It is. Please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes,
so,
please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Neeraj, as already mentioned so many things about me. Today, I'll be covering about the status and conservation perspective of wetlands, especially in India. During last webinars, people have covered the policy and other aspects of wetlands. So now I will focus on specifically status of wetlands in India and what are the conservation values. So let's start with this slide. As you can see on the right side, there is a seasonal photograph showing one of the highest breeding site of black-necked cranes in Ladakh, which is known as Yayatso wetland. And on upper side left, there is Renuka wetland, which is the smallest Ramsar site in India. And another photograph is denotes to the riverine habitat, which is Yamuna River. And believe me, you won't believe that after getting water from Kain, Betwa, and Chambal, this river adores so many species of water birds, ghadial, dolphin, etc. So these wetlands are very thriving. And if I consider wetland, so we know that wetlands can be defined in so many ways. As a poetic muse, you can say where the water meets land. And bit going to the scientific terminology, then it's a transition zone between land and water. And if I'll go for the official definition by Ramsar Convention, then it's a any type of marsh, peatland, or any permanent or artificial or temporary water body which holds at least 6 meter of the water depth during low tides, especially in uh, marine habitats. So this is one of the definitions by Ramsar, and another definition which denotes the coastal and riverine ecosystem around the wetlands, which has more than 6 meter water during low tides. So it is a bit confusing for many of us, but since it is very gray, so the definition varies from continents to continents. But Ramsar, as a means standard definition, we consider it as a definition of wetland. Going to the evolution of many species around wetlands, then it was the Paleozoic era when first time plants actually evolved in aquatic habitats. And this was the same era when amphibians and arthropods were evolved. Especially these giant millipedes were dwelling on the earth during this era. Subsequently, it was Mesozoic era when you must have heard about the extinction of dinosaurs. So it was Katy mass extinction. So after that, water birds were evolving during the late Cretaceous and the upcoming of the Cenozoic era. So in some way, wetlands were the refuge for those species who took who conserved themselves from this mass extinction. So that was the time when water birds also evolved. And during Cenozoic era, it was the giant mammals which were thriving in the all wetland habitats, especially the giant beavers. So this is how it looks in the evolutionary history of the wetlands. Especially if you see the background pictures, the leaves are like somewhat ferns. So this was a typical representation of that era. Coming to the categories of wetland, then we can broadly categorize into inland wetlands and coastal wetlands. And if I talk about the types, then we can define it as a marine, estuarine, lacustrine, riverine, polystrine, and artificial wetlands. Let's go into the inland wetland types. Then the wetlands which are formed by the lakes and ponds are considered as lacustrine wetlands. And those are by marshes and swamps are considered as polystrine wetland. And the floodplains and some oxbow, you must have seen oxbow lakes. So those are the types of riverine wetlands. So these are the broad categories of wetlands for us. Now coming to the some ecosystem services, those services which we get from nature or our ecosystems in terms of economic and as well as for our sustenance. So we can broadly categorize in four: provisioning, supporting, cultural, and regulating. Coming to the provisioning services, then there is water supply, food, material, raw material, medicinal, and ornamental resources. Then there are supporting services like the nutrient cycle, net primary production, pollination, dispersal, and habitat for wildlife, hydrological cycles. Then there are cultural values, services, recreational, aesthetic, science and education, and spiritual and historic. Coming to the regulating services, then there are flood control, climate regulation, groundwater recharge, water purification, regulation, retention, and drought reduction. The regulating services can be known as nature-based solutions. So at the present time, it's in vogue that wetlands are the best example of nature-based solution to mitigate many of the anthropogenic pressures. If you could see in this graph, then most of the highest graph are showed by the wetlands, especially saltwater wetlands and freshwater wetlands, which are contributing to maximum net primary productivity, which means the energy in terms of biomass. So these are the ecosystem which are containing most of the biomass in terms of energy. As you know that wetlands are considered kidneys because they can remove up to 60% of the heavy metals and absorb up to 90% of the nitrogen and phosphorus contains, which can cause eutrophication. They are also considered as sponges because they can hold up to 5.67 million liter water within an acre. So imagine this much of water they are retaining in themselves. And they are also considered as sinks because they can contain more than 50 times of the rainforest carbon in them. And also they are very helpful to sustain many human lives, close to 400 million people. So you can imagine the services they are providing us by these ecosystems. Lastly, very important factor, which is the biodiversity. So these are considered as the nature's supermarket because they are containing almost 40% of the world's flora and fauna, including 30% on fish species, which is a major food resource for the humans in coastal areas especially. And there are close to 20,000 animal and plant species which are dependent on these wetlands. Now coming to the India's biodiversity in wetlands, then close to 20% of the Indian birds, which are water or water associated species, are dependent on wetlands. And in aquatic mammals, then there is Gangetic species of dolphin, Gangetic river dolphin, Indus river dolphin, and Irrawaddy dolphin. So these endangered species are also found in our freshwater and estuarine habitats. There are 3 crocodilian species, including endangered mugger and ghadial. Mugger is the freshwater crocodile, and saltwater crocodile is least concern species, but still these thrive in some estuarine habitat of Sundarbans and Chilika Lake. You must have visited Chilika Lake. And there are close to 30 species of freshwater turtle species and tortoises in India. Another very significant species for wetlands is swamp deer, which is a mammal species or a deer species. And these have 3 subspecies, mainly Duasalai, then Rajisinghai and Brendai. So these are also thriving in and around the wetland ecosystems. Coming to the water birds and the relationship between the aquatic ecosystem, then they contribute, they actually sustain each other. As you can see on a figure on my right side, then there is a figure which is denoting feeding, water bird, defecation, and aquatic ecosystem. So this is defining a nutrient cycle, which is called the gonotrophication. So gonotrophication is the process in which water bird contribute nutrients in form of their defecation, and then it reverses and goes to again in the system in form of resources, in form of food resources. So this is how both are complementing each other in form of gonotrophication. Another contribution by wetland birds is ecosystem engineering, which is known as bioturbation. And it has been seen in the flamingos and swans, which are very large water birds. They actually contribute in bioturbation. So what actually happens in bioturbation, you can see in the photograph. So with their bill and with their webbed feet, they actually disturb the ground surface of water, which actually disrupt the nutrients and the food material, and which usually comes to on the upper layer of the wetland, and this goes on as a cycle. So this is how they are actually changing the nutrient cycle in these ecosystems. So water birds also are considered as the pest controller, pollinators, and seed dispersal. Coming to the status of these resources in India, so then there are close to 1 lakh lakes are present right now in India, and there are 600 rivers, and close to 15,000 or 16,000 lakes are in Indian Himalayan region. Wular Lake is the largest freshwater lake, which is about 190 square kilometer, and Chilika is the largest estuarine or saltwater lake in India. You can see there are some west flowing and east flowing rivers, and this can be the rivers in India can be categorized in 3 categories: Himalayan rivers, which are mostly originate from the glaciers, which is Ganga, Yamuna, and other rivers like Indus. Then there is Deccan rivers, which have originated from there. Some are east flowing and some are west flowing. And there are coastal rivers, which usually originate from the coastal areas, and they also submerge in the coastal areas itself. And there are some major river basins in India, like the Gangetic river basin, Brahmaputra, Indus, etc. So this is the overall status of rivers in India right now. Coming to the some figures and facts, then there are close to 7,005 lakhs wetlands present in India right now. Actually, it's a bit older data, but still very relevant for us. And now, if I talk about the Indian Himalaya region, then there are close to 8.5 thousand high altitude wetlands, which are mostly above 2,500 meters. These are the estimation for that. So, in which Jammu Kashmir has combined with Ladakh has about 3,600 wetlands, followed by Arunachal Pradesh and then Uttarakhand. So these many wetlands are present in form of glacial lakes, in form of marshland, peatlands, and permafrost lakes. Further, there are efforts to identify some water bodies on country levels which has different use, especially for industrial, pisciculture, domestic, recreational, etc. So there are close to 24 lakh water bodies present in India right now. But there are some loopholes, like there are some gaps of data, especially from Ladakh, Uttarakhand, and Arunachal Pradesh. So once this gets again reassessed, then there will be more clear picture in terms of existing water bodies. But the good news is the most of this ownership belongs to panchayats. So that is a good part, that there is a collective effort to having ownership of these water bodies. And then we are also optimistic that okay, these can still thrive mostly in rural areas. You can see there are 96 to 97% of the most of these water bodies are existing in rural landscapes. So this is the overall figures for the water bodies in India. Now coming to some legal, or you can say conservation aspects, then apart from national parks and wildlife sanctuary, there are some international treaties or convention, you can say. So Ramsar is one of them. India joined it in early 80s, and it was a convention which happened in Iran during 1971. Right now, till February 2025, we have about 89 Ramsar sites in India, mostly in Tamil Nadu, followed by Uttar Pradesh. And Chhattisgarh is still waiting to have this designation in their state, although they have some good wetlands there, but they are still waiting. So this is the condition of Ramsar sites in India, and you can see in Himalayas, if I'll see, in Uttarakhand, there is Asan Barrage, then in Himachal, there are Renuka, Pongdam, and Chandratal. And in Ladakh, there is Sokar and Somururi wetlands. Another very important aspect in terms of wetlands, especially, which includes forested as well as aquatic habitats, is important bird areas, which is now also known as important bird or biodiversity areas. So there are close to 550 IBAs in India right now, which are categorized on the basis of threats and endemicity of of birds. The highest number of IBAs are in Assam and Karnataka, and there is only one IBA in Delhi right now, which is Okla, and it has been shared by both Delhi and Gautam Budh Nagar city, which is Noida. And the total area under the IBA in India is about 1,79,000 square kilometer. Another very you can say a new idea comparatively of Ramsar and important bird areas is OECMs, which is known as other effective area-based conservation measures. So what happened during Tuning protocol, which was a CBD and you can say COP meeting. So they fix up some targets, mainly 30-30. So 30 means by the 2030, at least 30% of the biodiversity rich area should be conserved, irrespective of their ownership. So these OECMs are mainly some private lands actually, and private lands you can see in Jabarkhet is one of the examples in forested habitat. While in aquatic habitats there are Jagatpur Lake and Godrej's Firosa mangroves and Chowda Rakhal Lake in Gujarat. So these are some examples of conserved habitats apart from some legally, or you can say apart from national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Considering about the threats which are very important to know to wetlands is the urbanization, especially in the cities and towns, because most of the wetlands are getting encroached by for building and for agriculture especially. Then there is a problem of pollution. Then climate change is one of the issue, especially if I'll consider the Chinese wetlands. Then there are invasive species which are actually impacting wetland habitats, and then shrinking headwater sources for the wetlands. Then biomass removal, in terms of, you must have seen the water chestnut which comes in the market, and other food materials. Then there is a problem of sedimentation in wetlands and unregulated tourism. If you can see in the figure, then this is the example from Ladakh. So how actually unregulated tourism is thriving in Ladakh. In 1970s, it was about 2 to 500 tourists came in Ladakh, which has now been close to 3.5 lakhs in 2020. There was a slight dip, you can see, which was happened due to COVID. And then again, there is a rise in tourism in Ladakh. So these are some threats to wetlands, and there are some conservation strategies which can be followed, especially by delineating buffer zones around wetlands. That could be based on the socially or ecologically meaningful. And buffer zone can be based on the ecological, social, and cultural values, and that can be of few meters to few kilometers. As an example, I'm showing you the Somururi and Sokar Lake. So this is a study which we did in Ladakh. So you can see there are some buffers around the wetlands which are in few meters. So it was based on the ecological information collected by us about the behavior of water birds. So that depends on your objective and also the challenges. So right now, as you can see, that we have delineated buffer based on the water bird behavior. So this is how we can actually strategize the conservation of wetlands in India. Apart from that, on government levels, many things are going on. China has declared 6 Chinese cities as the wetland towns. So they are actually restoring their wetlands. And there's a good news from India as well. Recently, Indore and Udaipur has been nominated as India's wetland cities, which is an accreditation by the Ramsar Convention again. So these 2 cities will be now taken care of by the government to conserve its wetland. And also because the wetland are future for us, because these future cities will actually contribute to various to fulfill various demands of water, as well as to mitigate extreme climate conditions, especially the mangroves, which are very supportive to mitigate the tsunamis, as well as you must have seen in the coastal areas. So vegetation is very helpful there. So this is the future of every continent and every country. So wetland need to be conserved for our sustaining future. So with this, I would like to end my talk here, and I would like to thank Director and Dean and also the nodal officers of the NV Center, and also to Amir. With this, I would like to thank all.
Thank you very much, Neeraj. That was really an amazing talk. So if I'll just go to the chat section and see if we have any comments or suggestions, and then we can move ahead accordingly. So yeah.
So right.
Yes.
I don't see any actually.
We will post some. It's okay. Yeah.
YouTube, you can check. There must be some comments.
Yes. I'm checking. I'm putting the first one here. Can you see it?
Okay. Yes.
So, what challenges do researchers face in monitoring and conserving wetland ecosystems in remote or high altitude regions? I mean, you can cite some examples from your experience.
Yeah. So there are various challenges, especially if you will consider the high altitude wetlands. First of all, the logistics and the seasonality. So seasonality play a very vital role. It depends on your objective. If you are doing some uh, means physiochemical type of research, then you have to be present there across the seasons. So that could be one of the limitations and one of the challenges for researchers. Apart from it's logistics mostly, which I felt during my field work in Ladakh, because there were about 25 to 30 wetlands which I need to cover there. So logistics was one of the issue, and again the climatic conditions. So those are extreme habitats,
Yeah.
very thin air, and you may get easily hypoxia there. So these are some challenges in those landscapes, especially in high altitude regions.
Okay. Nice, nice, wonderful. So this is I just wanted to because I couldn't get it. I thought there was some
Yeah, sure.
break in the network as well. So
Oh,
you were talking about your study, the where you delineated those buffers on the basis of bird behavior. If you could talk about that a bit.
so what actually I did? So my question, my objective, as I mentioned, that depends the length of buffers depends on your objective. So our
Okay.
objective was related to the water birds. So how water birds are getting disturbed by tourists, especially
Mhm.
tourists. So what we did, we took some behavioral observation, especially the flight initiation distance. So at which distance the bird are actually getting disturbed. So we
Okay. Okay.
actually physically took some measurements. We approached different individuals to different species of water birds, and then we try to measure the distances at which distance different species are reacting. So
Okay.
based on that, with the average distances, we suggested these buffers. So these were mostly for, and you can finally give some buffers based on the most critical species. That
Species.
could
Yeah.
be based on their endemicity or their IUCN status.
Status,
So
yes.
basically, on average, we got 3 to 400 meters buffer. So that
Okay.
much buffer we can delineate around the wetland at least
Mm-hmm.
when there is a peak tourist season. So we should not allow tourists beyond that, because you must have seen in photographs that people
Yeah.
often take their vehicles inside the wetlands,
Yeah.
and then they get stuck for the weeks and even for months, because there is no logistic for them to get vehicle out from those wetlands.
Wetlands.
So
Yeah.
this is how they are getting disturbed there. And
Mm-hmm.
as well as the marmots, there are some
Yeah.
species which are residing on the shore lines, like the marmots, pikas. So they also get affected by these tourists.
Cool. Cool. Thank you. So there is one question from Amol Khumbar. I will just put it on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Sir, do you think CRZ notifications will help in saving wetlands or need any amendments in notification or in patent rule?
Uh, yes or no, because that depends on the implementation of things. You can see even that applies to our tiger reserves. Some are doing very fine, some are still lagging behind. So that depends on the implementation of these notifications. But yes, especially for the metropolitan cities where where development is increasing very rapidly. So yes, such embargoes need to be implement there to stop the degradation of wetlands there. So that again depends on the who is implementing those policies.
Yeah, yeah. This also strike my mind because you spoke about the invasive species as well. So
Hmm. Uh, I saw means in Ladakh I hardly get the opportunity, but yes, during my research in the Gangetic Basin, of course there was Pistia and Icornia especially. So these were some species which were actually impacting the wetlands, especially now which I saw in Okhla Bird Sanctuary. But now it has been managed very uh, effortfully by the department there, but still there are some habitats left. So yes, there are some invasive species and even if you'll see the our backyard, so some
yeah,
years ago we actually cleaned and it took a while. We
yeah, yeah.
actually um management actually gives some money to get rid of the pistia there. So this is how things
Understood.
are going on in
Yeah,
wetlands.
yeah. True,
So
true.
you know the now impact that how much it is covering the wetland area.
Yeah.
And
So there's just one more thing I had to ask before we leave. Yeah. So there are several Ramsar sites, like you said, either 89 or something like that. So has it been like effective or in terms of conserving these ecosystems, wetlands?
Actually, Ramsar sites is just a designation. Means you are getting some international importance, and you must be getting some additional funds. But in case of the legality, that remains again the subject of respective forest department, how they are
Yeah.
implementing the rules and regulations there.
Regulations.
But yes, for to make a wetland famous worldwide, Ramsar site is fine. Okay, there is a tag to that wetland
There's a tag
that
to
it
that.
is an important wetland for means internationally it is an important wetland.
This one question popped up. It's from Ayan and is asking, do you think that the wetlands in the high altitudes are usually ignored during policy making because lack of identification?
Yes. So now there is a new project has come out in the GB Pant Institute, which is dedicated to high altitude wetlands. So they are going to map again very intensively. So I think that will add on to the policy level. But till now, because we don't have much information on these wetlands, especially which are beyond the 5,000 meters, which are mostly permafrost or the glacial lakes.
Mhm.
So we have very little information, and those are very critical wetlands or
Wetlands,
lakes
yes.
because they are contributing to sometime to the climatic calamities. Because you must have seen Chorwadi Tal in Kedarnath, which got busted during 2013. So that is
Yeah.
some examples. So we need to check out, and we need to take monitoring as a very regular exercise now during these extreme climatic events.
Yeah, in relation to this because you said there are like other options as well. There are like opportunities as well. So I was just wanted to ask you, because since you are dealing with the wetlands, you have studied wetlands. So what would be some emerging areas of research in wetland conservation that the researchers should currently focus on?
I think first of all, the productivity thing. So, what is the productivity of the wetland? Then,
Mhm.
ecosystem services is another. Actually, we don't have much evaluation as such. Means the quantification. There are
Yeah.
some studies, but not enough. So, if this goes as a policy thing or means a regular practice, then it would be very nice, and we will have more precise data on productivity
Wetlands.
and the ecosystem services. So that will add on to the conservation uh, scenario actually. So means government will also get focused by
Focus.
these data things, means data about the ecosystem services and productivity things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me just go through the chat section once again. If we have
Mhm.
anything else, I think that's it. That's it. Let me just check the YouTube once again.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Okay. Fine.
That's been all the questions. So thank you very much, Neeraj, for such an insightful and thought-provoking session. And we would definitely love to have you again with us, and so that you could share some more field experiences from your studies,
Yeah. Sure.
and
Sure.
yeah, you shared your valuable perspectives on why these fragile ecosystems need conservation and need our urgent action and attention. So, as we conclude this Wetland Day webinar series, I want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible journey we had over the past few sessions. We have delved into the ecological significance, policy frameworks, conservation challenges, and community-driven efforts that define wetland protection. Each session has reinforced one key message, that is, wetlands are indispensable to our environment, and their conservation is not a choice, but it is a necessity. A heartfelt thank you to all the esteemed speakers, participants for making this series a success. Your engagement, curiosity, and commitment to conservation has been truly inspiring. While this webinar series comes to an end, our responsibility towards wetlands does not. Let's carry forward the knowledge we have gained, spread awareness, and take meaningful actions in our respective capacities. I once again thank you, Neeraj, for this
Thank you.
enriching session, and thanks to everyone who have been a part of this journey. We look forward to more such discussions in future and more collaborations and efforts towards the wetland conservation and sustainability. With this, we formally conclude the Wetland Day webinar series. Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you again. And to all the folks out there, stay engaged, stay informed, and let's continue working towards a healthier planet. Cheers. Thank you.